This episode of Artist Decoded is brought to you by No Wave Academy. As creatives and artists, we have each personally experienced the turbulent road of artistic self-improvement. And as the co-founder of the LA-based artist collective No Wave and No Wave Academy, I can tell you that our objective is to offer an alternative path to a traditional arts education. No Wave Academy courses are taught by some of our favorite artists. They're also our personal heroes and colleagues. Some of these artists you may have heard on this very podcast, while others have been featured in exhibitions at the No Wave Gallery. Such artists include Casey Baugh, Mia Bergeron, Nick Runge, Sean Cheetham, and Kate Zambrano, to name a few. All of our instructors are working professional artists that have been showcased in galleries and museums, both locally and around the world. At No Wave Academy, we work tirelessly towards evolving the way you learn and to expand your artistic passion and craft from the very best in the field. We believe that everyone has a unique artistic spirit. With guidance, experience, and the proper tools, students have the ability to invigorate and elevate their work. You can unlock and unblock your creative inner voice. Join us and walk into the next chapter of your personal artistic evolution. Go to nowaveacademy.com. That's nohwaveacademy.com. Type in AD-10 at checkout for 10% off. Now, on to the episode. Hey everybody, this is your host Yoshino. You're listening to episode 192 of Artist Decoded. Today I'm joined with actor Raymond Lee, who you would probably recognize from his reoccurring role in the HBO show Here and Now. He's also in the newest Top Gun film that is scheduled to release later this year. I'm also joined with my longtime friend, writer and director, Julian Doan. We talked about their most recent short film, which premiered at the 2021 Sundance Film Festival. The short is called Raspberry, which is a film revolving around the subject of death and the grieving process. This is a very personal story for Julian, since the gestation of the film was spurred by his father's struggle and subsequent death from his battle with brain cancer. The film has a poignant humor and absurdity to it. It's subtle with its mood and execution, and it's really just an incredible piece of work. You should all definitely check it out when you have a moment to, and when it's released to the public, because they haven't released it to the public yet. Also, I want to give a shout out to my friend Joseph Lee, who plays the brother character in this film. Hey Joey, how are you? And there you go. There you have it. So here it is, my conversation with actor Raymond Lee and Julian Doan. Hope you enjoy this conversation. Anyways, guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah, so I wanted to start off with the first paragraph of the director's statement. And I found this to be really interesting because, I mean, we're talking about, like Ray and I were talking about earlier, it's a challenging subject. Death is always a challenging subject for a lot of people. And so I'm just going to read this back. Life is a paradox. Throughout his life, my father espoused this philosophy, that the world we live in is predicated on the constant coexistence of opposing forces. This idea became most apparent to me in his death, when my family and I stood by his bedside one morning and casually watched as he took his last breaths, succumbing to his 2-year battle with cancer. And then, so I have two questions, one for Julian, one for Raymond. So, during your father's bout with cancer, were you ever able to talk to him openly about death?
Yeah, we did all the time, actually.
he had cancer for like 2 years, and you know, it was really hard to hear about. It's like you sort of know from the beginning that it's going to be about 2 years for him to live once you get diagnosed. So I think for me to I just started like writing a lot of stuff. You know, we were going through a lot of like tension at home and a lot of like drama, like as like the 2 years went on, and like it's sort of this weird disconnecting thing to try to like go through that as like a human, as his son and as a family, but also like this sort of disconnected way of like me like going, oh, well, I should like write these ideas because I feel like I'm going to want to put this into something someday. And it was like, it already felt a little pre-planned in that way. And that felt kind of weird, you know, but there would even be times where like, I remember one of my favorite conversations in like recent memory that I had with him was when we were moving. He moved to Huntington Beach, like maybe like 6 months before he died, from Thousand Oaks. And we were in like the U-Haul and we were driving down the 405 to Huntington Beach. And I was like telling him all these ideas for like the film that I was writing, you know, about him getting cancer and about like him essentially like when he dies. I was like, I have all these thoughts and ideas, and I was just talking to him and he was getting like excited about it. Like he was like, oh yeah, that'd be great. And then this can happen and this can happen. And I was like, this is so strange that I'm like talking to you about your own death that's going to happen sometime in the next year probably. And like that he was like really engaged with it, you know, but that's just like the kind of person he is, I guess.
Do you think that you get part of your sense of humor from him?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the sensibilities that are like in the film are like very, very much things like him and I would just chat about, just sort of the absurdity, I guess, in just life, you know?
Definitely. Yeah. And then, so, you know, as an actor, you know, what were some of the emotions that were going on in your head when Julian approached you to want to do this film? And how did that conversation start?
Julian and Joel and I, our friend that we spoke of earlier, we have a shared Dropbox, and Julian and Joel are constantly writing. And every time something new pops up, I get an alert and I read it. And on this particular day, it got uploaded. And like, I think everybody was like on the computer at the time too, and just titled Raspberry. It's like, cool, I'll open it up. It's only a few pages. Let's give it a read. And then I started scrolling through, and the way that the script was structured, the way that it didn't feel like, I don't know what number draft that was, Julian, but it felt like a completed script. Like it felt like that was something that we could shoot immediately. And it was something, you know, it's just one location. I'm like, dude, let's just do this. And I think immediately, like, I don't know what your thoughts were, Julian, in putting that up and thinking that was going to be made so soon. But I feel like it moved just really quickly after, like, we just said, yeah, oh yeah, this is awesome. And it was also so close to you. I had known that your dad had been grappling with cancer, and I'd known that what you were going through personally. And it just seemed like the timing was just really good for it. And it goes to show that it was, because the pandemic was butted up right up against it. And we were so lucky to finish the film too. But yeah, I was just really moved immediately. And it had so much of Julian's sensibility in it. And I just thought it was just the perfect script. And I thought I had to play the son as well, who was at the time named Matt. And I was like, I got to be Matt. But at the same time, you were also too like, would you be interested in being Matt? I'm like, oh yeah, fuck yeah. But yeah, and it's also, you know, like, I haven't dealt with death as intimately as Julian has, but it's always looming. It's an ever-present theme. And I was just very curious to get into the mind of what the son would go through. And yeah, the role interested me as well.
It's funny because like, I had been writing a lot of disconnected scenes and stuff throughout those 2 years. And like, it hadn't really come together in like a fleshed out script. It was, you know, sort of like all ideas for a feature. And it was just like, you know, I've been doing a lot of working in the post part of the industry for a long time, but like not doing a lot of my own stuff. And like my partner Brianna and I were like, oh, let's like write more of our own things this year. So I kind of, it sort of was just like, I just wanted to get some pages done. And so I just like lifted this script, like this, the first scene of this feature, and then like tacked on this raspberry thing, sort of like in aims for it to be more of like a sketch, like more of a punchline, and uploaded it. And I didn't know, I kind of forgot Ray was on this Dropbox. I didn't know anybody had access to it. I just saved it. And was like, all right, I like wrote 3 pages today, feeling really great about myself. Gonna go, you know, eat dinner now. And that was a good Tuesday, that kind of thing. And so yeah. I don't know. I guess I was really taken aback, by Ray's response, because I thought it was just this funny joke. And then he told me it was like really moving. I don't know, for whatever reason, I at the time I didn't, maybe I like was too close to, I don't know. I didn't see that in it or something. That plays into, I guess, my trepidation. I was like, really, Ray? Okay, you like this? You think it's good? Like, do you want to be in it? I was a little like, if it's cool, if you don't, like, you don't have to say yes. So I felt like that, I don't know, it was like Ray reading it, and then from then on, like other people reading it, that kind of galvanized, like, you know, me, and then put the energy into the film coming together. And so it was not planned, I guess is what I'm saying.
I'm curious, like, I've been thinking about this just a lot, just, you know, like interviewing tons of artists and stuff. But do you guys think that some of the best ideas are found?
In what sense?
In the sense that, you know, a lot of the times, you know, people may think that there's like a really strategic approach to like a creative mindset, right? Mm-hmm. But, you know, for instance, Stephen Pressfield, the writer of The War of Art, you know, he says something about like being available for the muse to like reach out to you, essentially. And then so what I think about is being emotionally available and being attuned in the sense to where you are ready. You know, Julian, maybe you can think about it in, you know, your work as an editor. So you're constantly honing in to like different parts of your craft. Ray, you know, maybe it would be about, you know, acting in theater and then also acting on the screen. But I'm curious what you guys think.
For me, from not coming from a writing perspective, because I've heard both sides for the writer. Some writers choose to sit down at their desk 8 a.m. every morning and just pound something out until something comes out, and that means that they've made some progress on their story. And other writers can wake up at 2 a.m. with just a dream and just blast out an entire screenplay. I think neither are more or less effective. And I think it's mainly up to the individual on how they function. So that's what I gather for writers. But for me, I just try to surround myself with work that inspire me, whether it be music or paintings or just scenery, or I just watch a lot of movies, even if it's just kind of in the background. I just try to keep something on, and I just like to think that my brain is constantly just absorbing. And a lot of times when I'm doing something mundane, driving, you know, taking a shower or something, like something will just come to me as, that's an interesting thing to use as a character for this. But whatever project I'm working on, or even if I'm working on an audition, I try to surround myself with work that feel like that it's of that world. So it'll just inform my creative process.
Yeah, I have a lot of, you know, I have a lot of anxiety often about that kind of thing. Like, especially this film, for example, once we kind of started getting the ball rolling and we were making it, I remember feeling like I get really nervous when like I don't have like a full picture painted in my head of like how everything is going to go down. And so, you know, I think there was like about 3.5 weeks before we started shooting, and I was kind of like, I wanted like it's like on me, I wanted everyone's head to be like as deep into this thing as mine was, where I was just like running through like all the possibilities. And I know that not everyone has the time to do that. And I think it was like, I don't remember how long before, but Ray, like, you started really like texting me or calling me and you're like, yeah, it's like once I'm like about this many weeks out, like that's when I start to really think about it. But before that, I was like, man, like we're not talking about this as much as I feel we need to be and this and that, but like it's still too soon, you know? So I do find that like you got to like kind of let it go and sort of wait for those things to come to you. And I think a lot of the things we started talking about found their way into the film. And like even, you know, like the script that you read, it's like, I mean, it was, the overall bones of it are still there, but it's like only really once like people started reading it and like, then I sat down and go, oh, okay, well, maybe we bring it down to 3 characters and maybe we add this little scene with like the pamphlet where you picking it up and which wasn't in there in the beginning. And then, you know, there's a lot of other inspiration that comes up. It's like, I thought I had it really shot listed and like everything planned in my head. And then we get to like the house and then our production designer, Jake, starts like putting like bookshelves like in certain places of the room. And then I'm like, oh, well, Ray can sit behind that. And so I feel like it's a lot of things just like kind of happen and like build upon other, you know, you sort of get inspired by like other people trying to like work within the framework of the film. So it can, I mean, just today I was like, I don't feel like my inspiration always comes to when I'm like wanting to be inspired. I'll sit down and put on a movie and be like, okay, I'm going to like learn how to, you know, kind of like learn how to do this. And then like today I was walking from my desk to the kitchen to just like fill up my water. And I had like a brilliant thought about the next script I was writing. And it's like, it's not even like, it was just in the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I was like, oh shit, I got to write it down.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that came from. Like,
yeah. But I think that's the thing is about, you know, being emotionally available enough and also honing into like the things that you know, like how your brain works, how your brain functions and being able to be open to that, whether it be like, you know, you wake up in the middle of the night having to take a piss and then you have to write down some poem or something, you know, just something. And it could just be, you know, because I also think that, for instance, like when you wake up from a nap or from, you know, like when you're sleeping, I mean, there's studies on this where you're like tapped into your subconscious state of mind. So you're not necessarily thinking, but you're more so feeling. And that could be contextualized. And that's why dreams are also so sporadic and all over the place sometimes. But it's really telling you something about yourself subconsciously.
do you do that with your photography?
What, like take someone's photo like right after I take a piss in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Just stay by my door.
Yeah.
2 or 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I must get my camera right now.
Yeah. I think this guy's a sociopath. Stand right there.
Listen to my piss.
Yeah. Watch me pee.
I guess I'm just curious how you like, you know, take that sort of sudden inspiration into like photography. Is it like writing it down and like notes in your phone, or you know how to translate that?
I think I get it. No, I mean, I think with photography, at least for me, it's very spontaneous. You know, I set up little parameters. I mean, a lot of the times I'm shooting, it's a black backdrop, but it's really about, I mean, when I'm shooting someone's portrait, it's about the connection, so that I'm really stay attuned to what the person's saying. So I just have a conversation with them, and then I try to capture them as honestly as possible. That's if it's a portrait, you know. But if it's something that's more constructed, then that's like a different thing that I'll think about. But I also collaborate with a lot of different people. So, for instance, my business partner and I, Justin, we did this. He came up with the idea of this Hungry Ghost series, which is like these bodies that are morphed together. But he was essentially utilizing my photography for that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I mean, but I think that there's so many ways to create. So it's just like being open to the spontaneous acts of creation. But
Totally.
yeah. But anyways, going back to the film, I'm curious about just the grieving process in general and what this film has taught you about that. I too have, my father died a couple of years ago, and I'm just curious how this allowed you to process those feelings in an honest way and what your thoughts are on that.
You know, I feel like for me, it came, I mean, in the actual, it's like we shot it like in my dad's house. We shot it in his bedroom, like the room that he died in. You know, I sort of think on paper it would be really difficult emotionally to kind of approach that, but it wasn't really for me. I think maybe because I had 2 years between my father dying and shooting this to like kind of, cope with it in various ways. But I find that like revisiting that kind of stuff in conversations with like Ray and with, the other actors, and kind of like trying to figure out where we're meeting in terms of like our ideas on loss and grieving and like, their experiences. I feel like that was, I don't know, it kind of like opened me up to like how other people are sort of like processing that kind of thing. So I suppose it's helpful to like the grieving process as a whole in that way. And then I think just maybe now that the film's done, I'm getting like more of a chance to like reflect on it a little bit more. And kind of like hearing how people are responding to it. I think it like kind of opens it up in a different way.
Yeah. And in terms of that response, I mean, how has that affected the way that both of you view the film? Now that hasn't premiered yet, but now that it's going to be premiering in Sundance, and yeah.
I feel very validated with all of our creative, with all the choices that we made creatively. I feel like we made the film that we sought out to make, and all the moments where, there was payoff and the buildup was all justified. And I feel like, I'm very proud of Julian. I'm very proud of, everybody that was able to get on board with this on the same page, because I feel like it's a very specific sensibility you need to have to like build up everything for something. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but just the absurdity of the nature of the film itself too. Yeah, I mean, I'm just very impressed, with Julian, because he's just able to throughout the years, seeing his work, it's just like fine tuning and just getting to know his voice better and getting to know his sensibilities better, and being able to disseminate tasks and jobs, and to lead on set, and to get it together in a day, to shoot everything in a day. I just thought it was such an impressive feat. We were fighting the sun as well, because we had a lot of natural light feeding into the house, and to add the manufactured light also, it changed the tone of the room. So we had to get it in, but it never felt hurried or rushed. And I feel like there was a lot that was done in the pre-production with Julian's conversations with the other actors to get everybody on the right page, so that on the day that when we showed up, I hadn't worked with, and as close as I am to Joe, I've never worked with them in a creative space as an actor. And so to show up on the day and to meet our mom, my sister, and everybody, for us to feel like a family on day one without a table read or anything, was nothing short of miraculous, but also at the same time just a testament to how well Julian had thought this through. And I don't think the end process or the end product was an accident.
I mean, without even getting into specifics, like a lot of the film is like about like a very close relationship between sort of absurdity and comedy, and in the context of like a really, really tragic event, right? And I feel like it was just really, I'm happy that I was very nervous about tonally, just straddling that line, and I'm really pleased that like Ray and especially Ray's sort of like final moment with the father, and that the other actors were able to kind of like nail the seriousness of, the scene without undermining it, and also keeping like all of that comedy in there. I'm sort of like blown away by that. And, I'm happy people get it, because like, I think people have had like really nice reactions to it, really warm reactions. And look, like the sort of like tone of the film really shifted just by people reading it. Like I said, like it kind of started off as a bit more of like a sketch, and like in Ray reading it and in Brianna and Turner reading it, then you start to go, okay, like something else works here. And I kind of got to like lean into that, and we have to like lean into the truth of that and like follow that to the finish line. And I think that like people's reactions sort of come out of that, you know? So I'm super grateful for like everybody helping shape like the tone of the film. I don't want to say that it was all like planned from the start necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seems like, I mean, just like any film shoot, there's so many different variables to be working with. But to be able to nail that tone and how subtle each movement is, and to be aware of those things and how they build up. I mean, I personally was like laugh crying, you know, like, but it felt
perfect. That is the desired response.
Yeah, but it felt good too, you know, and I watched it a couple times, and each time, you know, I mean, you know, each time you revisit a piece of artwork, you see a little new something. Like you see maybe some photos on the wall, and then I think to myself, you know, whose photos are those? And you know, are they Julian's photos? Is it your family? And then I look at the blocking of the scene, and then, you know, but at the first pass, I'm just kind of intaking the mood and just trying to understand the subtle nuances of expression, and realizing that, you know, this is, I mean, even when the father is revealed and there's those little crusty things on the eyes, just like those little details, I think it just kind of like, you kind of, I don't know, at least for me, I was just like, something seems a little off here, but it's a scene of death and you want to respect that. So, you know, like, I don't just immediately laugh at that. Right.
But like you might do that in real life, you know, you might sort of come to that and like you're like, oh my God, I feel horrible for laughing. But it's just, I've noticed this tiny little thing, and like all of a sudden now I'm like trying to contain myself because I know it's wrong and it's making it worse.
Yeah. No, totally.
But, you know, shout out to the makeup artists, Alicia and Amelia, for those eye crusties.
Yeah.
And shout out to Harry for keeping his eyes closed perfectly still that whole time.
The best dead guy.
And the most awkward thing was that, like, in trying to do that, it was like I was sending a lot of reference photos to people, and like the reference photos was like my dead father, literally like 15 minutes after he passed away. And I'm like, hey, I need to like ask you first if you're comfortable seeing this, like. And I felt uncomfortable that I took it. Like I felt there was some level. I was like, why did I take this photo? Like, why did I? And now I'm like I don't know. You know what I mean?
I'd love to see that in a scene.
Like me taking that photo, like right after they died, they're like holding the phone over the body. They're like, I need to do this right now.
I'll use this at some point.
Yeah.
But I think that also speaks a lot about just our Western perspective on death as well. I mean, even if you look back at, I forget what year was this 2019 when The Farewell came out? And then it's just challenging the Eastern and Western perspectives on death in a very visceral way. Right. And so I don't know. I mean, it's just interesting how, like recently one of my friends, my really good friends, his girlfriend passed away, and we've just been talking about like the grieving process, and we've been talking about that, you know, like how in Western culture, like death is seen in a certain light as opposed to like Eastern culture. And I don't know, I just find that interesting. Do you guys think about that?
All the time.
Yeah, I had to think about it for Raspberry. I've had people in my life pass, but nothing so close. But you know, walking through Julian's emotions about what he experienced, and me trying to kind of be in lockstep with that, made me really think about, oh yeah, this does seem unnatural just for something so procedural to happen immediately after something so heavy. But yeah, that is exactly the kind of space that this film floats in. So it's just perfect tonally, and it creates that kind of schism that we need for good art too. So it was interesting to walk through your shoes, Julian.
I mean, you know, I don't know if it's like fully, there is somewhat of the exploration, and I don't know that it's so like one-to-one, because like what it is like in the film, there's like these white characters who come to like take this person away, and they you know, it's never really like, I guess, fleshed out, but like they live in like kind of the Western world, and it's sort of, the idea is that when like Ray says goodbye to his father, is that like there's this, I mean, your family sort of just so like blindly accepts your goodbye. And the American characters do too, but you could sort of tell that like there's a sense that
they're going to have a conversation about it going back.
They're surely going to talk about it later.
Yeah.
And they're going to talk about it in the car with the dad in the back.
That's what I'm. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And that's the thing too. I remember in the early passes of the editing, like it would be so stark when they would cut away to the two white characters. And it just felt like I was watching a different movie, and it would take me out of it. And I wasn't sure if that was what I was supposed to feel, but it was basically, it's not like you changed the lighting or anything. It was just literally a camera set on the family and then a camera set on the people taking the body away. And it just felt odd just looking at those two things cutting back together. I felt like a completely different film, but that's exactly the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, you know, like you said right now, it's like, I don't know if that's the way I was supposed to feel. Right. And that's also, I think also speaks about the grieving process as well, because there's no real right way or wrong way to grieve. You know, everyone has their own way depending on how close they were to the person that passed. And you can't really predetermine that. It's just, you know, how, right.
I mean, you know, like one thing that happened for us that's not explicitly in the film, but I think kind of informs like the relationship between Ray's character, the son, and the rest of the family, is that like when we were going through my father passing away, you know, he's not Buddhist, but his mother is. My grandmother's Buddhist. And there was a lot of like tension in these really like heightened times of like, you know, her way of processing it and her way of, you know, I say imposing, and I know that she doesn't mean to do it in a way that's like not respectful of her family, but you know, it felt at the time like my grandmother imposing like these Buddhist beliefs on the rest of us, things like, well, we don't want to cry in the room next to him, you know, because his soul won't be able to like leave, you know, it will sort of like have all this like bad negative energy with it, and it won't be able to like, you know, he won't be able to move on. And I'm, you know, me being raised in like a Western culture, like was totally the opposite. I'm like, I'm going to cry right onto his body if I want. Like I, you know, like this is just, I can't help it. It's just coming out of me. And that's like this really interesting sort of divide, I think, between like my grandmother, who's, you know, follows like a Southeast Asian tradition, and then me being raised here in, you know, American culture. Again, it's not like explicitly in there, but I think there is that like split of like Ray's character, you know, and I love that it's all like sort of unsaid and through like looks and kind of just like the tension within Ray's body and everything, that like whether you feel some sort of judgment from the family. I actually, you know, I don't know if it's like if the family's judging him or if it's him projecting that they are judging him, but there is like a tension between what he's not doing, which is like crying with them, and how they're grieving, I think.
So I wanted to ask you too about just collaboration in general, because I know that you both have been collaborating since 2013, I believe. So that's brings us to almost 8 years. So what do you guys think about that? Like, how's that strengthen your guys' brotherhood, being able to work on all these projects? I think it's been 6 now, right? Right.
Yeah, I'm just glad he wants to work with me still, that I haven't lost your interest, Julian.
I feel the same way. I'm always a little afraid, like, oh man, is this one gonna be good enough?
Nah, man. I'm a forever fan. Like it's I just love it because like, you know, Julian's one of the people in my life that I know whatever point he has he's in his life, he's going to be perfecting his craft, whatever that craft might be. And I know his sensibilities are only going to get deeper, and I know his influences are only going to get stronger. And like, I'm never worried about Julian, like not like thriving in whatever situation. And whenever he has his own thing to work on, when he's able to step away from his editing jobs and create, I'm just always like leaning in to be like, okay, where do I fit in here? Can I be that guy? And I'm thankful that you share it with me. And this is what keeps the creativity, the creative part of me alive too, because I'm not a writer, I'm not a director. And so to be a part of the creative process and in the genesis of whatever project that you're working on, it makes me feel like I'm a part of creating something too. So it definitely lights up parts of my brain that is usually pretty dim. So yeah, man, I'm just stoked that you take me on your journeys with you, man.
I mean, it's kind of like, in addition to like us working together on so much, we started out doing like a lot of like broad comedy. I've done like broad comedy stuff for so long, and this one's so different. And honestly, it's something a lot closer to, I think, what my like voice sort of maybe always was, but I never felt like I was able to kind of like pull it off. Mm-hmm. And I suppose that probably comes with the subject material just being a good fit. But like I've also seen Ray in a lot of other things, plays and, other TV and film work that he's done. And I think it's always like, for me with Ray and even really any other creative friend that I have, I'm like, I see that they're like capable of this thing. And I'm always like kind of like waiting for whatever the project is that we can like sort of explore that. And honestly, Ray, I think this one was like, I was so interested. I'm like, I want to transform you into something. Like, I don't want to see Ray when on the screen. Like, I want to try to like do something where it's like I see a new side of you, and I know you can do it, But like,
yes, Dad.
I don't know. I think it's fun to do
that with. Yeah, man.
I don't necessarily like want to like just fit someone like, oh, he's good at that thing, and we'll just like use the thing that they're obviously good at. I don't know. I mean, there's that too, but like, wanting to push our friends, I guess.
Yeah,
definitely,
for sure.
I hope that doesn't sound manipulative.
Totally, like I don't even know who you are anymore. But I'm also prime. I'm that guy to be manipulated. So just have your way, bro. Yeah, no, I mean, these are all parts that live in me too. The character of the son is not too, it's closer to what I feel like I actually am. But I'm constantly told to be something otherwise by the industry and, my family even. So like, in essence, I feel like that was not too far of a departure for me. And like, yeah, it's interesting where Asian men are too, just in the industry as general. That's a whole nother conversation. But like,
well, we're all Asian men, so let's hear it.
I mean, it's just interesting. Like, there's a real push for us to be romantic leads now. We all collectively don't have enough practice in doing it, so there's gonna be some awkward missteps with whatever project or actor. But eventually, we're all gonna get better. We're in such an early stage of that. And people aren't used to seeing that, so we're still viewed as exotic. So wherever they choose to place us is where we're going to fall unless we carry ourselves differently. Right. And so I try to not bend too far into what they want me to be. Instead, if I just keep presenting myself as authentically as I can, I feel like eventually, like Julian is able to, be creative in finding different roles for me. I imagine these relationships that I'm fostering in the industry are going to do the same for me too. Maybe that's way too, maybe I'm asking too much at that point, but I mean, so far I feel like it's worked out okay. And I get to have practice, elsewhere too, on my own, with plays. I feel like in theater, they're much more willing to push boundaries because Asian playwrights are much more prevalent. And there's just always been labs and workshops and places where you're able to just have readings, and I get empowered through that and to show many dimensions. So anytime Julian approaches me with something where if I'm playing a landlord who has a Filipino accent, because he just does, and it's not then I'm going to play that guy, and I'm going to try to I'm excited to be stretched, but yeah, I just don't ever want it to come at the expense of us taking any steps back. Whatever that may mean.
Definitely. I think that's really well put. Yeah. So I have one more question for both you guys, and this is a question that I usually end on. But what advice do you guys have for artists and creatives?
Oh, it's such a big question.
It better be good. Don't let me down.
How old are they?
How old are they? It's a general. I keep it broad for a reason and open.
That means we will project.
Yeah.
I think Ray and I are both going to think a little bit here.
That's fine. You can think.
Cut to 3 hours
talking.
later.
We'll just stare at each other for like 12 hours and then it'll be 6 a.m. and then
and then we'll hear you peeing and snapping photos.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, as corny as it sounds, to just try to figure yourself out. I think self-awareness is really important. But at the same time, you got to be a little reckless too. But I think try to absorb as many things that excite you creatively and always try to stay inspired. And much like how you pursue your pursuits, Yoshino, to like get better at whatever you're doing, I think you just have to be interested in a lot of things all the time, whether if you're trying to make meals, to make sure that's going to be the best meal you're going to make. And I think that'll inform everything else, because I do think the path of an artist is a holistic path. I don't think you could just be like, I think every amazing actor is also really great at something else too. I'd have to imagine that. It's also an occupation that lends itself to learning skills very quickly, whether it's an accent or if you're playing a chef and you have to get good at that really quick, then you have to believably pull that off, or playing a pianist or whatever. So for actors specifically, I would just say stay curious, be an expert at whatever you choose to learn, or try to be, and never think you have it all figured out, because you're going to be constantly shocked and inspired. And I'd say take the work seriously and don't take yourself so seriously.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I have like a lot of friends in, say, like other mediums of like the art world that kind of I talk to in depth about these kinds of things. But I think that this happens a lot in, say, like the film world. But I think like a lot of the time, people in this field seem to, I mean, we're all like fans of a lot of stuff. And I think people try to like, and myself included, I did this for a long time, is I look at other things that I really admire. And I sort of think that like my admiration of that is my voice. And I kept trying to like impose that on things, And so I think it kind of plays into what Ray's saying, is like figuring yourself out. I think like what, for me, and what makes me feel so fulfilled with finishing this film is because like I know it came from like a lot of like, I mean, I obviously like thought about this stuff like all the time for like 2 years, very traumatizing stuff. And so I felt like I feel satisfied in it, even if it had no, sort of like exterior success, I guess, because it just felt like it was like me saying it. And that's like the stuff I respond to when I watch it, when I listen to it, when I like look at art, is that like it has this very specific point of view, I guess I just appreciate that. And that's why I appreciate working with Ray, and then like even like, Joe and Molly, Jihi, Alexis, all the other people. It's like everyone had like a very like specific point of view that was like wholly their own. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like they were so confident in that. So I suppose if there's people who are like, I don't know, maybe a bit younger or going through some sort of like crisis in figuring themselves out or something like that, I think I've like sat down, really, maybe this sounds a little too like navel gazing, but I've like sat down and just go like, how do I talk about the world on like a daily basis? And I tried to like figure that out and like figure out how I think about things.
What do you mean by
like,
that?
I didn't like record myself, but I like sat down and started to think like, what are the things I like regularly bring up in like conversations with new people? Like when I'm trying to make them when I'm subconsciously like trying to make them know what kind of person I am, like what's that thing that I'm always saying, you know?
Mm.
Does that sort of make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. Because then you can understand your level of comfortability within yourself, depending on how, I mean, I think the film industry and just like living in Los Angeles in a big city, people say like the 15-second elevator pitch, right? So being able to essentially dissect and put into like a short sentence what you do, and in order for that to be I don't know, somewhat inspiring for someone to ask more questions or something like that, so yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. Yeah, but I think it's good to understand like that internal dialogue too, and really like try to step back and try to understand like what is the thing that we're like telling ourselves on a daily basis about ourselves, and how can we create new neural pathways to essentially like break down those negative thoughts, turn them into positive things, or whatever is an example. But
right.
I think that's what you were talking about. I don't know, I could have been totally wrong.
I think it's along those lines, and I think it's even like, I don't know that it's like things we do consciously. It's like, I'm trying to think of like a good example, but
I mean, the things you tend to ask about are things you either like know about or want to know about, right? Which both informs what your curiosity is and what you feel like you're knowledgeable about. And yeah, that's a really interesting thing to actually be aware of. How are you steering conversations to maybe something that you know, or something that you're curious to know? And yeah, the questions that you're asking are really, I think, construct who you are too. So yeah, totally.
I mean, yeah, it's like, I still can't even think of like a good example, but like, I mean, Ray, is there something you like, is there a place in LA you absolutely had a horrible experience at? Like if there's a restaurant you had a horrible experience at, like anytime anybody brings up that restaurant, you're going to like jump in. You probably could have just met this person at a party and you're like, oh,
place?
The Taco Bell on Venice Boulevard, this thing happened to me there. And it's clear like how often you bring it up that you have like a strong conviction about that experience in your life. And I guess that's what I was saying is I've like sat down a couple times and go, what's like that story I bring up to like every new person when I sort of like I feel like I always got to tell this person at a party, like this weird random like opinion that I have. And why do I think I need to give that all the time?
Probably because you're processing it.
Lately, you've just been going up to people and saying, I got into Sundance. That's I'm just kidding. That's not what you
Yeah, that's all. See, that's all you have to say.
That's how you start every conversation.
Yeah. That's great. So what burger do you want? It's like you're at like the drive-in.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was gonna get a number 3 with fries.
Yeah. Milkshake. But anyways, thank you both for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And
thanks for having us, man.
Yeah.
Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I haven't talked to you for years, man.
I haven't talked to Ray in 3 days maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, what, man. But we text furiously. So, yes. I mean, we're in touch. So,
yeah.
Listeners, don't get the idea that Julian and I aren't connected at the hip, because we absolutely are. If that makes Brianna jealous, I'm very sorry.
Bit, aka Justin Dosher Hopkins. Creative producer is Noah Wainwright. YouTube and creative support is by Tyler Scully. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.